Welcome back to CIA Declassified. By 1964, the CIA's Oxcart program, better known as the SR-71 Blackbird, was the king of the skies. It could fly at Mach 3.2, high enough and fast enough to outrun any missile the Soviets could throw at it. But in the windowless offices of the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, the mood was restless. The agency knew that Soviet radar and surface-to-air missiles were catching up. To stay invisible, they didn't just need to be fast, they needed to be orbital. They needed Project Isinglass. Named after a clarifying agent used in brewing, isinglass was intended to clarify the Soviet landscape from a height and speed that rendered interception physically impossible. The goal was Mach 20. Project Isinglass wasn't a jet, it was a boost glide vehicle. The concept, primarily developed by McDonnell Douglas, involved a manned craft launched from the belly of a B-52 bomber. Once released, its rocket engines would ignite, propelling the pilot to the very edge of the atmosphere. A quote from the CIA Office of Special Projects. It's a memo from 1965. The Isinglass vehicle represents a radical departure from conventional reconnaissance programs. By utilizing a boost glide trajectory, the craft will skip along the upper atmosphere like a stone on water, maintaining hypersonic velocities while remaining above the effective ceiling of current and projected Soviet interceptors. End quote. The blueprints described a shuttle-like craft constructed primarily of Rene 41, a nickel-based superalloy designed to withstand the hellish temperatures of hypersonic flight. At Mach 20, the leading edges of the wings would glow white-hot, reaching temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Central to the isinglass design was the Pratt & Whitney XLR-129 reusable rocket engine. Originally designed with a staged combustion cycle, it was intended to provide 250,000 pounds of thrust. Though the aircraft never flew, the development of the XLR-129 directly influenced the design of the Space Shuttle main engines decades later. The logs from the General Dynamics feasibility studies show an obsession with thermal management. The CIA wasn't just building a plane, they were building a manned furnace. A quote from an engineering log from McDonnell Douglas. The primary constraint remained the survivability of the pilot and the optical sensors. At Mach 20, the friction of the residual atmosphere creates a plasma sheath around the vehicle. This not only threatens the structural integrity of the airframe, but creates a blackout zone for radio communications. End quote. To solve the heat problem, engineers proposed a circulating coolant system that would pump liquid hydrogen through the skin of the aircraft. The hydrogen would absorb the heat, preventing the metal from melting, and then be fed into the rocket engines as fuel, a closed-loop system of elegant, terrifying complexity. A significant point of speculation among aerodynamicists is whether isinglass utilized wasted or Coke bottle fuselage shaping to handle the shock waves generated at Mach 20. Some suggest that the redacted design documents hide a radical wave rider geometry, a shape that literally allows the aircraft to ride the shock wave it creates, significantly increasing lift-to-drag ratios at hypersonic speeds. The CIA's Project Rhineberry served as a parallel study to isinglass, focusing specifically on the radar cross-section of hypersonic shapes. Declassified wind tunnel data indicates that at Mach 20, the craft would be practically invisible to 1960s-era pulse radar, as the speed of the vehicle exceeded the refresh rate of Soviet tracking computers. There is significant speculation among aerospace historians that isinglass was intended to carry more than just cameras. Given the bay configuration in the McDonnell Douglas blueprints, many speculate the CIA explored the possibility of a precision strike variant, an aircraft that could drop a payload anywhere on Earth in less than 30 minutes, bypassing all traditional early warning systems. A quote from a declassified internal review from 1967. Total projected cost for a fleet of 8 Isinglass vehicles is estimated at $2.6 billion. The technical risk is categorized as extreme, with a projected loss rate of 1 airframe per every 10 sorties. End quote. Historians speculate that the pilot selection redactions hide the fact that the agency was looking specifically for pilots with X-15 experience. The theory suggests that the CIA was essentially running a shadow space program in competition with NASA, aiming to put men into suborbital space under a top-secret shroud long before the space shuttle was even a concept. The optical payload for Isinglass was designed by the iTech Corporation. It was a high-resolution hypersonic camera that used a series of mirrors to compensate for the visual distortion caused by the plasma field surrounding the aircraft. The goal was to take photos from 100 miles up with a resolution of less than 12 inches. There is persistent speculation that Isinglass was the true beginning of the Aurora myth, the supposed Mach 5 aircraft spotted in the late 1980s. Proponents of this theory suggest that while Isinglass was officially canceled, the CIA continued the research under a new code name, eventually perfecting the pulse detonation engines that many believe powered the mystery craft seen over the North Sea and the California desert. A recurring theory suggests that the titanium shortage of the late 60s was exacerbated by the secret stockpiling of Rene 41 and other exotic alloys for Isinglass prototypes. While no full airframe was ever publicly revealed, some speculate that structural test articles were built and flown in the late 60s at Groom Lake, accounting for several high-speed UFO sightings that did not match the flight profile of the SR-71. A quote from the final program recap: Isinglass remains a theoretical masterpiece. However, the advancement of high-resolution satellite photography through the Corona and KH-9 programs has rendered the risk to human pilots and hypersonic platforms unnecessary. End quote. In the final declassified report for Isinglass, there is a 20-page section titled Annex K Recovery and Re-Entry that is almost entirely blacked out. There is heavy speculation that these redactions cover the emergency egress protocols or lack thereof. Many believe that at Mach 20 there was no safe way to eject. The speculation is that the agency was prepared to accept that any mechanical failure was an automatic death sentence for the pilot, and the redacted pages contain the deniability protocols for handling a crash on Soviet soil. Further speculation suggests that Isinglass was capable of orbital insertion, actually entering a stable orbit. The theory is that the agency redacted this because it would have violated the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Isinglass might have been the first true space spy capable of loitering over a target and then re-entering the atmosphere for a runway landing. Was Project Isinglass a success? As a flying machine, it was a failure. It never went into production. In 1968, the CIA officially canceled the program. The reason was twofold. The cost was astronomical, and the Corona satellite program had proven that you could take pictures from space without risking a pilot or a billion-dollar airframe. However, the CIA considered this study phase a massive success. The research conducted for Isinglass provided the foundational data for everything that followed in hypersonic flight. The ghost of Isinglass lives on in modern aviation. Technological breakthroughs, material science, the development of Rene 41 and advanced carbon composites used in the space shuttle leading edges, computational fluid dynamics, the mathematical models created to predict the plasma blackout at Mach 20 became the industry standard for re-entry vehicles, and hydrogen cooling. The active skin cooling concepts are currently being revisited for the next generation of hypersonic missiles and scramjet engines. Isinglass remains a monument to a time when the agency believed there was no physical limits to intelligence gathering. It was a dream of speed so pure that it outpaced reality. Next time on CIA Declassified, we move from the edge of space to the propaganda front of the Cold War. We examine Operation Safe Passage. Based on declassified records from 1954, we explore the covert evacuation of over 300,000 North Vietnamese civilians to the south. We'll deconstruct the CIA's black radio campaigns, how the agency used fake religious prophecies and psychological terror to move entire populations across a border to reshape a nation's demographics. Join us for the Exodus broadcast. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.